People just have to lump you into one category or another, and if you're not completely aligned with the left, they'll just lump you in with the right.
Yours is pretty easy to figure out, though, because you did endorse Bernie Sanders. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it should be like all of 1 second to figure out maybe you aren't.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's just, we're living in the weirdest time. People just want to categorize people in a tweet. They want to categorize people in 140 or 280 symbols. It's just, they just decide that you're this or you're that. That way they can categorize you as the enemy.
Does that bother you at all?
Nuance.
Do you care?
I mean, I wish that they didn't, but what are you going to do? You know, I mean, does it bother? I mean, yeah, if somebody miscategorizes me or mislabels me, I guess it would bother me a little bit, but that's just on them. It's not who I am. Like, I'm a big believer in social programs. I'm a big believer in welfare. I'm a big believer in taking care of poor people. I'm a big believer in social programs to clean up cities, and there's a lot of shit that we should be doing in this country to help people that are disenfranchised, because it's not fair. Anybody thinks it is fair that someone lives in a fucking crime-infested, gang-ridden inner city, and that's exactly the same as someone who grew up in the suburbs. That's crazy.
Right. So that would go against what I think a lot of people would expect you to say.
Yeah, but I also, I'm a cage fighting commentator. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. There's a lot of reasons why they would decide to categorize me as a right-wing person, but it's not correct. And also all this ridiculous woke shit that's going on, this bizarre mind virus that's going from universities into tech companies and the media, and just fucking infiltrating people with these rigid ideas of what you have to say and not say and what you can and not say. It's like, none of that is liberal. None of that is really like open-minded or progressive. It's all just it's a cult. And so if you go against it, the only thing you could possibly be is the other. So you must be like a MAGA supporter.
My main thing with it is, if I know how you're going to answer a question basically before it's asked, which I think you can do with like almost everybody involved in politics, I don't trust you.
Right.
and you really can. Like on both left and right, ask any question, you know what they're going to answer it. So it's like you're not thinking independently. Yeah,
there's a lot of that, right? Like if you are on the right, I have to assume you're dismissive of climate change. If you're on the left, I have to assume that you want a woman to have the right to choose, period. And like there's like things like that, like you are pro-abortion, or you are pro this, or you are pro that, and that. What's weird now is like if you're on the left, you're pro-Ukraine war. You want to send like you're pro-military-industrial complex, getting funneled billions and trillions of dollars into their system to be able to create weapons to fight off Russia. And it's like, whoa, that's the left now.
And really, that should have nothing to do with either side. Really,
No.
like I mean, how you feel about that, I don't think should be left or right. I mean, that's a super complicated issue, to be honest. For me, at least, it's like Ukraine. Like, you don't want a country being invaded that doesn't want to be invaded. They're not Americans, but they are humans.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do? Well, like, what do you do there? It's a tough situation.
It's very tough. And it's also very complicated, too, because there's NATO's involvement in pushing weapons closer to the border of Russia and trying to get the Ukraine to join NATO. And
it's like Jack Ryan. Latest season, Jack Ryan. It's literally sort of like that plot. But no, there is no easy answer to a lot of issues. But it's just so black and white, and that's no good.
None of it's good. This is a scary time to be alive. Someone told me the other day that Nostradamus predicted that there was going to be some sort of a World War III. But doesn't that every year, like
Nostradamus though just throws his hat on the field, and it's like it's vague enough where anything can be true.
Yeah.
So everything he's ever said can be true.
Right. Didn't he predict someone named Hister that was going to start a world war? He came real close with like Hitler.
That's like have you seen the Titanic book? The book that was written about the Titanic before the Titanic? If you want to Google that, there is literally a book that is called, like, I forget the name of the book, but it's like the biggest cruise ship that will ever sail. It's going to hit an iceberg and it's going to sink. That is weird. But Nostradamus, I'm not buying the hype on him.
I haven't looked into it.
Now, if he has a guy named Histler,
what does it say? What fewer people have heard, a short novel called The Futility, The Wreck of the Titan, published in the U.S., writer Morgan Robertson, a novel that tells the story of the world's largest passenger ship, the Titan, and how it sank after hitting an iceberg. A novel published 14 years before the Titanic sank.
that's pretty crazy.
That's crazy. It's called The Titan.
Yes, and an iceberg.
Wow. But I bet they hit icebergs all the time back then.
Well, see, that's the Nostradamus theory, that if you do enough, like, I mean, you can at this point say pretty confidently there'll be another gigantic war at some point.
Yeah. The problem is,
how does yours stay lit? I
just
don't
keep puffing on it.
I told you I don't.
Got to get better at this.
I'm not a big.
You're
I
a
told
toxic masculinity guy. You have to do toxic masculinity things.
Not a huge cigar guy.
No?
No,
Like it?
I mean, I do like them, but I don't smoke them a lot. I kind of quit when I started my paper route. We had a cigar company called Honeys, something Honeys. So it used to be a paper route. I delivered it, and it was like our first advertiser. I'd smoke them when I drove the Astro van. I got so high, and I was just done with them.
When was this?
2004.
You had a paper route in 2004?
Barstool started as a newspaper. So I used to like hand it out, and we had those little news racks outside subway stations. For 48 hours, I just jump in my Astro van and fill the news racks, drop them in bars throughout Boston.
Really?
Yeah, that's how it started.
That's how you started?
Yeah, it's a newspaper.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your own newspaper?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd wake up like 4 a.m., go to the subway, hand it out to people, like walking by me, just scream at them, like, take the newspaper. Yeah.
What was the motivation to do that? Like,
So-
how did you get the idea?
I was always into gambling, and I had a normal sales job. I always knew I wanted to try my own thing. Flew out to Vegas, met with like the casinos. They're all like, you got to be a dealer. You got to start at the bottom. I was like, I don't want to do that. Talked to offshore casinos and said, how do I get involved? And they all said, the internet at the time I did this, if you went to a gambling site, fireworks, pop-ups, look like you're getting your credit card stolen. They actually said, get us off the internet, put us in a physical newsletter, and we'll advertise. So I sold like a year of advertising before we launched, and it was a gambling rag. It was like a 4-page newspaper, but I sold the advertising, and it allowed me just to morph. So like during the course of the year, we slowly moved strictly away from gambling to more like men's interest, like girls and things like that. That's how it started.
Wow. So when you were into gambling, like, why did you decide to do a newspaper?
Because I knew I wanted to do something I enjoyed doing. I was doing cold calling sales. I couldn't do that my whole life. And when I called these casinos to advertise, it's what I just said. The internet was cluttered.